I was married to Richard for 37 years. We shared a quiet life in a modest home on the edge of Knoxville, Tennessee. He ran a small construction business. I worked as a retired elementary school teacher. Our life was calm, routine, and lately distant. When Richard died of a heart attack while loading groceries, the grief came not with tears but silence, the kind that settles into the corners of a house and lingers, heavy and watchful. The funeral was simple. Friends dropped off casseroles, neighbors said all the right things, and then they left, and I was alone. 2 days after the funeral, I found Richard's old phone in his desk drawer tucked behind folders and tools, like a secret too delicate to face. The screen was cracked, the case dusty. I almost tossed it out, but something stopped me. When I turned it on, one voicemail waited left 3 days before he died. I pressed play. "Mr. Richard? This is Emily. Mama's real sick again. She won't go to the hospital. She's coughing up red stuff and she's really hot. Tommy and Leo are scared. Can you come, please? We don't know what to do." A child's voice, barely 8 years old, calling my husband for help like he was her father. I froze. For years, I'd suspected something. The long Sunday drives. The cash withdrawals. The time I found a child's toy in the backseat of his truck, and he said it was from a client. I'd built quiet resentments, and now I had a voice. A name, Emily. She wasn't some mysterious woman. She was a child. A sick mother's daughter. Someone who trusted my husband in a way I hadn't seen in years. I stared at the phone as if it might burn me. Then I dialed the number back. A woman answered, her voice weak, brittle. "Hello? Is this Dana Monroe?" A pause. "Yes, who's this?" "My name is Margaret Lane. I'm Richard's wife." I could hear the breath leave her body. "I think we need to talk," I said. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I can explain," Dana finally said, her voice cracking under the weight of emotion. But I didn't want an explanation, not right away. What I needed first was to understand. "There was a little girl," I said slowly, "who left a voicemail. She said her mother was sick. That little girl, Emily, called my husband for help." "Yes," Dana whispered. "That's my daughter. Emily, I'm so sorry. I know this must feel." "Where are you?" I interrupted. "At Mercy General," she replied. "Emily called your husband because I collapsed yesterday. The boys found me on the floor." I heard her breath catch. Then came the sound of muffled crying. "I'm sorry about Richard," she said between sobs. "He was everything to us. Everything to us." I felt those words like a crack in my chest. While I had been nursing years of quiet resentment, my husband had been someone's lifeline, a constant presence for a family living just beneath the surface of my world. "I'll be right there," I said, standing up before my mind could catch up. "Mrs. Lane," Dana said softly, "you don't have to." "What room?" 314. "But really, you don't need to come. We'll figure something out. Richard always said we should never be a burden to you. He talked about you all the time. He said you were the strongest woman he'd ever known." I ended the call before she could say anything else. I was afraid if I heard one more word about my husband's secret kindness, I might come undone. The drive to the hospital blurred past amber trees and stoplights I barely noticed. I thought of Richard, his stubbornness, the way he insisted on keeping our old truck, the quiet way he'd change the subject whenever I mentioned travel or upgrades. I'd always assumed he was being cheap or distant. Now I saw it differently. He hadn't been hoarding money or avoiding me. He'd been feeding 3 children, protecting them, choosing compassion over confession. The hospital smelled of disinfectant and tired hope. Room 314 was down a long hallway. I slowed as I neared it, unsure what I would say, or if I was even ready. Through the window I saw a pale woman lying still, an oxygen mask covering her face. She looked fragile, worn thin by years of hardship. And beside her sat a little girl with messy brown hair and a stuffed rabbit in her arms. "Emily." She was whispering softly to the toy, her lips moving in a quiet rhythm, maybe a prayer, maybe a story. Her eyes were serious, far too old for her age. I knocked gently on the door. Emily looked up, her gaze locked onto mine, wary but curious. "Are you Mrs. Lane?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. "Yes," I said, stepping inside. "You must be Emily." She nodded, gripping the rabbit tighter. I could see it in her eyes, fear, hope, and something else. Something that made me realize I hadn't just come to understand my husband's secret. I'd come to meet the legacy he left behind. Emily stood between me and her mother like a small, determined soldier. "She's really sick," she said. "She's been sleeping a lot, but she'll get better." Her eyes searched my face for signs of danger or judgment. I knelt beside her. "I believe you," I said gently. "Can I sit for a minute?" She hesitated, then nodded. I took a seat in the corner, giving her space. The woman in the bed stirred, coughing lightly beneath her oxygen mask. Her skin was far too pale, her frame too thin. But she was young, maybe mid-30s, and even in her illness, there was strength in the way she tried to open her eyes. "You came," she whispered, her voice raspy. "I did," I replied. "I think Richard would have wanted me to." Dana struggled to remove her mask, wincing with effort. "He said you were kind. That if anything happened to him, you'd understand." She paused to catch her breath. "He loved you so much. But he couldn't ignore us. We met him at the grocery store once Emily was crying. I couldn't afford food. He just started helping." I didn't know what to say. I had imagined betrayal, maybe another woman, a secret life. But this was something else entirely. A quiet, hidden act of mercy that had become a second life. "How long?" I asked. 2 years, she said. "We've been staying in the basement of a run-down house on Maple Street. No one knows we're there, but it's dry. Richard brought food, fixed the heater. Sometimes toys for the kids." "Kids?" I asked, glancing at Emily. She stood tall and answered for her mother. "I have 2 brothers. Tommy is 6, Leo is 4. They're downstairs with Mrs. Talbot, a friend of Mama's." I could barely process it. Richard, my husband, had spent Sundays with these children, reading them stories, fixing broken steps, making sure they were safe. The same Sundays I thought he was out at hardware stores. I turned to Emily. "Would you like to come home with me? Just for tonight?" She blinked, unsure. "Not to take you away from your mom," I added quickly. "But so you and your brothers can have a warm bed, some dinner, and she can rest." Emily looked at her mother, then back at me. "I don't know," she whispered. "When grown-ups in suits come to the hospital, they usually mean we have to leave. Mr. Richards said if anything happened to him, we should call you. He said you were good people." My heart cracked open. "I'm not in a suit," I said with a smile. "And you're not going anywhere without your mom knowing where you are." Dana's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to do this," she said. "We'll figure it out." I shook my head. "You're not alone anymore." Emily walked slowly toward me. She reached out and took my hand. "Okay," she said, "but only if Tommy and Leo can come too." "Of course," I said. "Let's go get your brothers." As we stepped into the hallway, I realized something had shifted. This wasn't just about understanding what Richard had done. This was about deciding what I would do next. Mrs. Talbot, the woman caring for the boys, was waiting in the hospital cafeteria. She was older, maybe in her 70s, with gentle hands and eyes that watched everything. "You must be Mrs. Lane," she said, rising as we approached. "Richard spoke of you. I'm so sorry for your loss." I nodded, still unsure how to respond to that name on her lips. My husband had spoken about me to another woman, in another life. That meant something. Tommy and Leo sat at the table with coloring books and chipped crayons. Tommy had the same cautious stare as his sister. Leo was smaller, messier, humming quietly to himself. When Emily appeared, Leo lit up. "Emmy, is Mama better?" "She's still sick," Emily answered, sitting beside him. "But she's getting help now." Tommy looked up at me, his face serious. "Is Mr. Richard coming?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetheart," I said softly. He can't come anymore." Tommy didn't say anything. He just looked down at the table, gripping a crayon so tightly it snapped in two. "We're going to my house tonight," I added, "just until your mom is better. She wants you to be safe. And warm." Tommy's eyes flicked to Emily, then to Mrs. Talbot. "Do we have to pack?" "No," I said. "You just need your shoes." They didn't argue. That evening, I drove 3 children home in my husband's truck. Emily sat in the front, clutching a worn rabbit. Tommy and Leo were in the back, whispering between themselves. When we pulled into my driveway, Emily gasped. "It's so big." It wasn't. Just a 3-bedroom ranch Richard and I had bought with the hope of filling it with children. That hope never came true until now. "There's a yard," Tommy said quietly. "And a swing set," I added. It might be a little old, but it still works. Inside, the house felt different already. Jake immediately ran his fingers along the couch, fascinated by the soft cushions. Emily paused at the kitchen doorway, staring at the full fridge and the cookie jar on the counter. Tommy lingered near the hallway, cautious. "Are you hungry?" I asked. Emily answered for all of them. "We had crackers at the hospital." "That's not dinner," I said, pulling ingredients from the fridge. "How about grilled cheese?" They watched as I cooked, silent, curious, not quite sure if this was real. At the table, they sat stiffly at first, but as the smell of buttered toast filled the kitchen, something eased. They ate slowly, like they were afraid it might be taken away. "You can have more," I said, "as much as you want." That night, as I tucked them in with extra blankets and whispered goodnight, I realized my quiet house had been filled with noise, laughter, footsteps, breath. And for the first time in years, I didn't mind it. For the first time in years, I wasn't alone. The next morning, just as I was helping Leo tie his shoes with clumsy fingers, the doorbell rang. Standing on my front porch was a woman in her mid-30s, wearing a pressed navy blouse and holding a clipboard like it was a shield. "Miss Lane?" she asked. "Yes. I'm Angela Wyatt, Child Protective Services. May I come in?" Her eyes scanned the living room behind me, the backpacks, the coloring books, the cereal bowls still on the table. The air inside the house shifted. Emily stood frozen in the hallway. Tommy immediately stepped in front of Leo. They knew what a clipboard meant. They'd seen this before. "I'd like to speak with you privately," Angela said. "The children need to get ready for school," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "They were removed from their home without proper authorization," she said. "We need to assess their current placement immediately." "They weren't removed," I said, stepping aside but holding firm. "They were rescued. Their mother is in the hospital. They had nowhere else to go." Angela consulted her clipboard. "We have a history on the mother. Dana Monroe was previously flagged for child endangerment due to inadequate housing and nutrition." "Because she was poor," I said. "Not unloving, not negligent, poor." "I understand you mean well," Angela said. "No," I cut in, my voice low and steady. "You don't understand. My husband spent 2 years helping this family. He brought them food, fixed their heater, read bedtime stories. These children are not cases to be managed. They are survivors." Angela blinked but didn't retreat. "Regardless, we need legal clearance. Without it, this arrangement cannot continue." I picked up the phone and dialed. "Greg," I said when the line picked up. "It's Margaret. I need you here, now. It's urgent." Angela shifted uncomfortably. "Miss Lane, you can't just—" "Children," I said, turning to the hallway, "go grab your backpacks. We're going to visit your mom before school." They moved quickly, used to the unspoken tension of grown-up conflict. Emily lingered at the edge of the room. "Are we in trouble?" she asked. "No, sweetheart," I said, bending down to meet her eyes. "You are never in trouble for needing help." After they left the room, Angela and I stood in silence. "You don't have to like what I've done," I said. "But I won't let you undo it, unless you're ready to stand in front of those 3 children and explain why the only safe place they've known is being taken from them." 20 minutes later, Gregory Shaw walked through the door, still buttoning his jacket. A family lawyer with a gray beard and calm voice, he'd known Richard and me for decades. As he listened, he nodded slowly. "Angela," he said firmly, "what would it take to grant Mrs. Lane temporary custody?" And just like that, the conversation shifted from confrontation to a plan. From fear to protection. From silence to a fight worth having. Angela outlined the process like a checklist: background checks, a home inspection, references, and Dana's written consent. Given the circumstances, she added cautiously, it can be expedited, but it still has to follow protocol. "I'm not asking for special treatment," I replied. "Just a fair chance to protect the children my husband already gave his heart to." We agreed to drive to the hospital that morning, Angela in her own car, Gregory with me and the kids. The ride was quiet. Even Leo, who normally hummed or chatted about clouds, stared out the window in silence. Claire looked better than the last time I saw her. Her color had returned, and though she was still frail, she was sitting up when we entered. Her eyes lit up the moment the children rushed in. "My babies," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Did you sleep okay?" "Whitney made us pancakes," Leo said proudly, "and she has a swing set." And she read the story about the rabbit, Emily added. The Velveteen Rabbit. Dana looked at me across their heads. That was Richard's favorite. Angela cleared her throat. Ms. Monroe, I'm Angela Wyatt, with Child Protective Services. I need to discuss your children's current living arrangement. Dana immediately tensed. What about it? They're currently with Mrs. Lane, but we don't have proper authorization. We need to evaluate alternative placements. Dana sat up straighter. Her voice was tired but unflinching. No. Excuse me? They stay with Whitney, she said. I trust her. Miss Monroe, Angela began again, we understand your preference, but Miss Lane has no legal connection to the children. She has love, Dana replied. She has a home. She fed them, bathed them, made them feel safe when I couldn't. What more do you need? Angela shifted uncomfortably. Legally, you're still their guardian, but the court. I'll sign whatever you need, Dana interrupted. I'm not giving up my kids. I just need help. And she's the only one who offered it without asking for something in return. I stepped closer. We're not trying to take them from you, Dana. I just want to make sure they're safe and loved until you're ready. Dana nodded slowly, her eyes glassy. Do you really want to do this? Take all of us on? I already have. Angela sighed, flipping through her clipboard. There will be conditions, regular check-ins, counseling, documentation. Done, I said before she finished. Emily reached for my hand and whispered, Does this mean we can stay? I looked at her, at Tommy's wary hope, at Leo's sleepy smile. Yes, I said, you're home now. Angela didn't speak again until she left, but as she stepped onto the porch, she turned back. I've seen a lot of things, Mrs. Lane, but what I saw today, that was a family. And for the first time, I truly believed it too. The children had barely settled into their new routine when the past came knocking, quite literally. It was a crisp Tuesday morning. I was helping Leo zip up his jacket when the doorbell rang. Emily peeked out the front window. There's an old man outside, she said cautiously, and a lady with gray hair. I opened the door to find a tall man in his late 60s and a woman with kind eyes standing awkwardly on the porch. The man removed his cap. Miss Lane? I'm Frank Monroe. This is my wife, Susan, Dana's parents. Emily froze. Tommy immediately moved to her side. Neither child said a word. We just found out Dana was in the hospital, Susan said. We came as soon as we could. Her voice was soft, but it carried the weight of years, of distance, of regret. Emily's grip on my arm tightened. Where have you been? I asked, sharper than I intended. Frank's shoulders slumped. We had a falling out when Dana married the boy's father, he said. We thought he wasn't good for her, and, well, we let our pride get in the way. When he died and Dana reached out, we didn't answer. We were wrong. Very wrong, Susan added, her voice cracking. We've regretted it every day since. I studied them. They weren't here to make excuses. They were here because something had cracked open in their hearts. Are you here to take them away? Tommy asked, his voice barely audible. Frank knelt down. No, son, he said gently. We're not here to take anyone. We're here to help, if you'll let us. The children stared at him, unsure. They had learned not to trust easily. And honestly, I didn't blame them. Claire will need to decide that, I said. It's not my forgiveness to give. Of course, Susan nodded. We just wanted you to know you're not alone in this. I closed the door behind them and turned to the kids. Are they really our grandparents? Emily asked. They are, I said. Your mama's mom and dad. They never visited before, Tommy muttered. They didn't know how, I replied. Sometimes adults get scared too. Are they going to come back? That's up to your mom, I said. But no one is taking you away. You're staying here. Their faces relaxed slightly, but I could tell the encounter had shaken them. That afternoon, I visited Dana alone. She looked stronger, her voice had returned, and she sat upright with a magazine in her lap. They came, she said before I even opened my mouth. They want to help, I told her. But I told them the decision is yours. Dana looked out the window for a long moment. I don't know if I can forgive them, but I also don't know if I want my kids growing up without grandparents. That's not a decision you have to make today, I said. She nodded, then looked at me. But thank you for letting them in, even when I couldn't. The days that followed were filled with quiet shifts, tiny changes that signaled we were all learning how to live together. The children settled into school, into routines, pancakes on Tuesdays, homework at the kitchen table. Leo made it his personal mission to find every squeaky floorboard in the house. Tommy asked more questions than Google. And Emily watched everything, always reading the room before she entered it. Claire returned home on a chilly Thursday morning. We had spent the evening before preparing her room fresh linens, a new lamp, a few books Richard had once loved. Emily placed her stuffed rabbit on the nightstand, so Mama won't feel alone. When the taxi pulled into the driveway, all three children rushed to the window. Claire stepped out slowly, thinner than before, but with color in her cheeks and something determined in her step. "Do you think she'll like it here?" Leo asked. "I think she already does," I said. The reunion on the front lawn was quiet and sacred. No fanfare, just the soft sounds of children clinging to their mother, and a woman breathing in the scent of her family. When they finally came inside, Claire stood just beyond the threshold, as if unsure she was allowed to belong. "This is your home too," I told her, "not just theirs." She gave me a grateful smile, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. In the following days, Claire moved through the house like a guest. She asked before using the washer. She apologized for staying up late. She wrote grocery lists like confessions: milk, bread, apples, as if each item needed to justify its presence. One evening, I found her crying in the kitchen. "I'm sorry," she said, wiping her face quickly. "For what?" "This," she said, holding up the grocery list. "This ordinary thing. I used to spend nights awake wondering how I'd feed them. I've had to choose between gas and groceries, and now there's just food in the fridge, and it breaks me." I sat beside her. "You don't have to apologize for needing help," I said. Claire looked at me, eyes shining. "Do you regret it? Taking us in? Turning your life upside down for a family that isn't really yours?" I thought about the silence that had lived in this house. About the way Richard and I had once passed each other like shadows. About the laughter now echoing in the hallways. Crayons on the floor. Bunk beds. Bedtime stories. "No," I said. "You didn't turn my life upside down. You gave it back to me." "But the sacrifice." "There is no sacrifice," I replied. "I cook because someone's hungry. I wake up because someone needs me. I laugh because a 4-year-old tells the worst knock-knock jokes in Tennessee. What exactly am I sacrificing?" She was quiet for a long time. "It's hard to believe we could be a gift instead of a burden." "Then, let me help you believe it. One day at a time." The turning point came on a rainy Sunday morning, when Emily and Tommy got into a shouting match over who was supposed to feed Misty, the scrappy gray cat that had started showing up on our porch the same week Claire came home. Emily stood in the living room, fists clenched. "I always do it," she cried. "I take care of everything and everyone, and I'm tired." Claire moved to intervene, instinctively reaching to smooth things over like she always had, but I stopped her gently with a hand on her arm. "Let me." I crouched down in front of Emily, who looked more overwhelmed than angry. Her little shoulders were tense. Her eyes were brimming. "You're right," I said. "You've been carrying a lot. But you know what?" She blinked, waiting. "You're fired." She tilted her head. "What?" "You're fired from being responsible for everyone else. Your new job is to be 8 years old." Tommy, watching from the stairs, raised an eyebrow. "What about me?" "You're 6. You're hired to play and ask too many questions. Leo's job is to build castles and spill juice sometimes." "And who's going to do the hard stuff?" Emily asked. I smiled. "That's our job. Mine and your mom's. Grown-up stuff belongs to grown-ups." Emily was quiet for a while. Then she whispered, "But what if I forget how to be a kid?" "Then we'll remind you," I said. "Every single day, if we have to." That night, after the house had gone quiet and the rain tapped gently on the windows, Claire and I sat by the fire with our tea. There was something soft and steady between us now, an unspoken rhythm. "Whitney," she said, "there's something I need to tell you about Richard." My heart gave a small thud. The day he died, he was supposed to meet us at the grocery store. He'd been planning to tell you, to bring us to meet you. He said he was tired of keeping secrets. I closed my eyes. The ache was sharp, but clean. "He told me you'd be mad, that you hated secrets. But he also said you were the kindest person he'd ever known, and that if anyone could understand, it would be you." I looked at the fireplace, At the photos now lining the mantel, Richard in his work boots, the kids on the swings, Claire smiling faintly in a hospital gown. "He was right," I said. Claire nodded. "He didn't mean to hide us out of shame. He didn't want to divide his life. He wanted us to be one." Tears slid down my cheeks before I could stop them. "He was trying to bring us together," I whispered. And he had. Not in the way he planned, but perhaps in the only way that was ever going to work. By trusting me to love them after he was gone. By giving me the chance to become something more than I'd ever been. Family. Claire officially moved into the guest room that November morning, just as the last leaves drifted from the maple trees in the yard. The kids were buzzing with excitement. Emily had made a welcome banner from construction paper. Tommy cleaned his room twice. Leo kept asking if his mom would still need medicine, or if she could chase him around the yard now. The taxi pulled into the driveway, and Claire stepped out slowly. Her body was thinner, but her presence was stronger. She looked up at the house not like a guest this time, but like someone coming home. "Welcome back," I said, opening the door. "Thank you," she whispered. And in those 2 words I heard years of exhaustion, survival, and the quiet beginning of hope. The first few days were delicate. Claire asked permission before turning on the washing machine. She apologized for taking up fridge space. She said thank you too often. The children, too, were learning how to divide their hearts. They loved their mother, but they had grown attached to me. It was a strange emotional dance, everyone afraid to step on someone else's toes. Then one night, I caught Claire crying at the kitchen table. She held up a simple grocery list: bread, milk, apples. "This," she said through tears, "this normal thing. I spent 2 years terrified we wouldn't have food, that I'd have to send my kids to bed hungry again. And now there's just food in the fridge. Like it's no big deal." "It is a big deal," I said gently, "but not one you have to carry alone anymore." A week later she approached me with an idea. "I want to work again," she said, "not because I owe you, but because I want to stand again." "I get it," I said. "What did you do before?" "Bookkeeping," she answered. "I was good at it. Honest work, steady." "There's an office upstairs. Richard never used it. You can have it." "You'd let me run a business from your home?" "Our home," I corrected. "And yes." That night, after bedtime stories and lukewarm tea, Claire sat across from me by the fire. "I used to think needing help was weakness," she said. "I used to think being alone was strength," I replied. We both laughed, a soft, tired, healing kind of laugh. Outside, the wind pressed against the windows, reminding us winter was near. But inside there was warmth, not just from the fire, but from something deeper. Love that had been chosen, not out of obligation, not out of blood, but because we had all looked at each other broken, worn, uncertain, and decided to stay. Some families are made in hospitals, some in courtrooms. Ours was made in grief, in grilled cheese sandwiches, in bedtime stories, in whispered promises not to leave. Richard didn't just leave behind a secret. He left behind a beginning. And together we stepped into it one